Before we begin our session, let us start by reciting Kitab Al-Fatiha. Amin, amin, ya Rabbal Alamin. The Honorable Dean of Istac, Professor Abdul Aziz Barhoud, our Honorable Speaker for this talk, Dr. Nurul Binti Norman. Thank you everyone for participating Istac-Iium series on spiritual, intellectual, and mental well-being enhancement 2023 talk number 3 on title Exploring the Canon of Medicine on Ibn Sina's Therapeutic Method. Welcome everyone again. Now, I would like to introduce our Honorable Speaker, Dr. Nurul Binti Norman. Dr. Nurul obtained her bachelor degree in Islamic Theology and Culture from Firdausi University of Mashhad, Iran. Then she pursued her study in Mufid University, Iran, and completed her master's degree in Philosophy and Islamic Theology. Then she obtained her PhD in Philosophy from University Malaya, UM. Currently, she is a research fellow in International Institute of Islamic Thought and Civilization, IIUM. So to all our audience, before we start this session, I would like to remind you, if you have any question, please drop in the chat box, or you may leave a comment in YouTube TV Live, or you may ask directly to the speaker at the end of the session. Without any further ado, we call upon Dr. Nurul to present her presentation on this particular topic, inshallah. The floor is yours. تفضلي مشكورة.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Can you all see me?
Not yet, Prof. Not yet, Doctor.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm not given permission to actually give. You can't see. I don't know why. We'll just talk, right? The video, I have problem. Don't know. My iPad is also not given permission. Let me see. Okay, right. Okay, it's maybe the Wi-Fi of Istac is not giving me permission. All right. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Everyone, welcome back to I'm sorry, I have problem with the video. I think it's the Wi-Fi of Istac is not giving permission to make video. It's okay. I'll go through the iPad. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today our topic is going to be on discovering the canon of medicine on Ibn Sina's therapeutic method. And before that, I want to wish you all Ramadan Kareem, and may this Ramadan fill your heart with peace, with harmony and joy. And I wish you all to be protected and blessed by Almighty Allah. And may this Ramadan enlighten our souls, and the love of Allah reaches the deepest core of our hearts. So maybe many of us know about Ibn Sina, about the canon of medicine, which is called Qanun al-Tib in Arabic. And but maybe you all will ask, what do I mean by therapeutic method? So I won't really go into that, medical therapeutic method. A little bit I will, but it's more on the spiritual part of this therapeutic method. And I will focus on how to feel better, to make healthy, what do you call it, decisions, set healthy boundaries, how to get emotional health, connections, and replace sadness, anxiety. That is the psychological part, but more on part of the spiritual aspect of the therapeutic method. All right. So let us go first on who is actually Ibn Sina. I think let me get this computer. This is the iPad. I'm sorry. Right. We should have gone to the Ibn Sina. Okay. So Ibn Sina he is one of the colorful scientists, and he is definitely a giant in Islamic history, scientific history, and even in philosophy. So Ibn Sina was born in 1980 in Bukhara. Bukhara is Central Asia, and he remained in this region, in Gorgan, in now it's called Iran, Gorgan, Ray, Hamadan, Isfahan. And he said that his early education starts by memorizing the Quran. And he said that I studied fiqh, that is the Islamic traditional science, and he completed the religious sciences, and then he moved to philosophy. So he studied, all the ancient philosophies, Greek, Aristotle, Plato, and the Muslim philosophers as well, Kindi, Farabi. He also studied mathematics and logic, but then later on, he turned into medicine. And he said medicine was the easiest than all other subjects that he studied before. And the amazing thing that when he finished all these subjects, he was 18 when he finished all that. And when he read Aristotle metaphysics, he was only 15 years old, and which was amazing. Metaphysics learning at 15 years old. Even though he said it was hard, he was helped by Al-Farabi's book uh, in understanding Aristotle's metaphysics. And when he was 17 years old, he was already appointed as a chief of physician. And so he is actually a child prodigy and polymath, and he's a genius and a celebrity, at his time. And he was very famous, and many looked upon him, and they were dependent on him and valued him to the most. So he cured illness, and he treated many kind of disorders. And you wouldn't believe that he does this treatment and cure all for free. And I would add to an event. Yeah, he said that one time he he cured a prince, at the local, the prince of the local ruler, and he had, like, a delusional psychological disorder. So this prince, he thinks that he is a cow, and he goes like mooing throughout the palace, and he says, like, slaughter me, slaughter me. And Ibn Sina, so they call upon Ibn Sina to actually cure the prince. And Ibn Sina came with a knife, and he says, he calls the prince and says, "Where's the cow? And where's the cow that I'm supposed to slaughter?" And when he was about to slaughter, well, he didn't want to slaughter, but this is one of his treatment. And he was telling the prince that, this cow is very skinny, and it's not good for me to slaughter a skinny cow. So later after that, the prince began to eat, and actually this helps in the cure and treatment of his delusional psychological disorder. So he believes that if the nutritional part is actually cured, and it actually helps in the treatment of the body, the whole body, the psychological disorder. So he became, when he became the doctor of the second last Samanid ruler, he had a very massive, he had a massive library, but it got burned, and many of his books got also burned. And his life had, it was many ups and downs, and he was seeking patronage. At that time, the scholars, they need support to actually practice of what they are learning. So he was moving from, he was seeking for patronage from one ruler to another ruler. And Samanid has, when they lose power, and another ruler came, so he escapes from the prison, and he got patronage from a sultan named Mahmud Ghazfa. All right, that was the end of he stayed there for quite a time. And his books is he has 450 books written, attributed to him, where 240 survived, and 150 is philosophical books, and 40 on medicine. And there are two famous books, which is one which I will present today on the canon of medicine, which is Qanun fi Tib, and which is one of the extremely important sources in medicine. It is the, what you call it, is the place of birth of modern medicine, actually, and it has been used throughout centuries, for 600 years. In the East and West, has been used as a textbook in medicine. And it has 5 volumes, and what else should I say? During 1650, I think, the European University had been used this book as a reference, as his textbook. And when medical revolution started in 19th century, they discovered, the revolution of medical revolution started in 19th century, when they discovered bacteria. With the microscope. So this book was a repository of all medical knowledge available. So he used his discoveries and produced well-structured work that was easy to read and understand. And maybe many of it is actually wrong right now, because he was working with the knowledge of his time. But yet they were also outrageous discoveries that prove right till this very day, and needed actually to be updated on modern medicine. So in this canon of medicine, there is the first section is called Kulliyat, and Kulliyat mentions about how the body works, how sickness works, and how to actually diagnose many of these diseases. And he listed 800 ingredients in his canon of medicine. When you can see, you use this to make drugs, and also he also listed on how they work, their properties, and it's also seen as an encyclopedia of pharmacy. And he also elaborated on the disease of disease of his time, from toe to head, and how to cure it, and how to prescribe on this, and explain separately through different parts of the bodily organs. And he also explained about diseases that affect the whole body, like fever. And he also explained about diseases that affect the whole body, his fever, like systems of organs. And in the last what do you call it? In the last book, he also mentioned about 650 drugs that can be put together with the first drug that's mentioned in the first volume, and it's a fantastic book. And he also wrote Kitab al-Shifa, which he actually Kitab al-Shifa, it sounds like a medical book, but it's actually more into philosophy, theology, and it was published before the Canon of Medicine. The the Canon of Medicine was published in 1025, and 2 years after that, Canon of Medicine before Kitab al-Shifa. So the Canon of Medicine was published in 1025, and two years later came Kitab al-Shifa. All right, let's go into Canon of Medicine. Okay, what I have to say about Canon of Medicine. So I don't know, I have a problem with the iPad. I think the internet is not good. And then here I can start the video. Ya Allah. Okay. So Canon of Medicine, they have 5 books, which is systematically, show everything known in the area of medicine until the point of time. And it's the structure of psychological apparatus of human being. That's what they actually discuss in the beginning. And then and the connection of psychological functions with the brain, he also mentions about the brain. And psychology is very important for medicine. So his psychological works, he discusses in a great detail. He also mentions about the essence of soul, and then consciousness, intellect and psychological functions. He observed a man in his entire, he talks also about spiritual knowledge, spiritual perfection, religiosity, and methods of achieving inner peace and well-being. This is what I'm going to furthermore talk about. Okay, so what happened during those days? Sorry, I'll elaborate more on how his life is before I go into Canon of Medicine. So the prominent Arabic leaders, especially those in the Abbasid dynasty, they had invited scientists from all sides of the world to the newly founded capital of Baghdad. So it's through 150 years that they managed to translate many books. And it's amazing that through this 150 years of translation, they managed to translate all this Greek, Roman, Persian, Indian, all this civilization, books that have created civilization throughout the centuries into Arabic. So these books, I'm sorry. After that, they in Baghdad there was a school, a translator school, that took the name of Academy of Sciences. That they were responsible of translating books into medicine books. Before that, I'm sorry. It was translator of books, was founded in Baghdad, were set for only medieval Arabic Islamic medicine, but later it became the Academy of Sciences, and it cooperated between the Muslim, the Jewish, the Christian experts in medicine, and it was amazing. All right. And then, there were significant ones. In the classical period of Islamic medicine, it was huge. They had medical authors, not only Ibn Sina, but Ibn Sina was the biggest one. He was the most famous one. We also have Muhammad Zakaria al-Razi, and then we have Ibn Abbas al-Majusi, and also Abu Ali al-Hussein, Ibn Sina, during the period of 1980 till his death in 1037. Okay. And okay, I will straightly go to the canon of medicine. So what he talks about in Ibn Sina in medicine, the canon of medicine, is that the canon of medicine is undoubtedly one of the biggest accomplishment in world history. And it was similar to, what Aristotle did for philosophy, or Euclid did for geometry, and Ptolemy did for astronomy, and Siboi did for grammar. And Ibn Sina had a particular method of observation and experimentation, because his method of observation and experimentation was also including logic and reason. And because of this, it was translated in 15 different editions in Latin and Hebrew, and for almost, I told you, like 600 years, it was fundamental in medical literature, and even especially in England and Scotland, and oh, I'm sorry, this iPad is really okay. All right. So what did he say? Medicine is a restoration of health when the health is lost. This is what Ibn Sina is saying. Okay, so he's saying that medicine is the science by which we learn the various states of the human body in health. All right, and when not in health, and health is likely to be lost, and when it's lost, it is likely to be restored to health. And in other words, is the art is health is conserved, and is the art whereby is restored after being lost. This is what he claims in his book. Okay, so in the canon of medicine, he made new discoveries. So he, among his discoveries were the usage of certain herbs, and he also discovered antiseptic effects of alcohol, and he also discovered discoveries about brain tumors and stomach ulcer, and he also had a theory of eyesight that was very new, that he says that the light that comes in the eye, it's when you want to see when you want to see something, it's not just something, the light from outside, from the external, from the many things outside, from the external things that exist outside, but also there is a light coming from a certain reflex, it emits from the eye and reaches the object. And that is why he is mentioned as the prince of physicians for about 1,000 years. And Ibn Sina also had rules of experimentation. So I told you that he has analysis and observation that uses logic and reason. And his diagnosis of disease was based on the cause and effect. This is also, he used it in philosophy, this theory of cause and effect. He also uses it in medicine and in psychology, his psychological treatments. So he finds the effect of certain, pharmaceuticals in its therapy, and he talks also about his personal experience in working with the patients in the canon of medicine. So he classifies these diseases in a general and specific way, and then he identifies the disease and the way of treating each organ. And one of his inventions is he correctly described the inflammation of meningitis and the difference between, similar diseases to meningitis. And he also invented the administration of remedy by injection needle. He was the first one. He was the one who actually invented this by injection needle. And also he was the first to use anesthesia during surgical operations. Okay, and then he what we can say is that we know that Ibn Sina, he fundamentally uses Aristotle books and knowledge, but actually what he has done, it's normal that, you know, when a scholar comes after a big scholar, he actually surpasses his teacher and what his teacher has given him. And if we see in philosophy, you know, when Aristotle talks about the soul, he is talking just about the material. He says that soul is a form. But then Ibn Sina, he goes beyond Aristotle by saying that it's a perfection. It's not only a form of a visual form, but a perfection of going beyond matter. And what else we can say that Ibn Sina, uh, when he talks about the soul, he tries to prove the soul independent from the physical matter. Okay, he says that the soul is related to the body. That's why he, in his message, in philosophy, he says that soul is what it's not imprinted in the body, but it he discovers the relationship between the soul and body. And this is why when he wants to cure his patients, he will use the method of not only curing the body but also curing the soul. So it actually what do you call it, it actually completes each other: treatment of the body, treatment of the soul. And without the treatment of the soul, the body cannot be cured. This is his particular theory. And but the soul actually, in philosophy, yeah, it doesn't depend on the body. It can go, it can, I mean, it doesn't need the body. It's he just sees it, you know, the body uses actually the soul to actually what do you call it, make activities, you know, produce activities in this world. And I don't really want to go into philosophy, so maybe you'll get, you know, more confused, you know, about the floating man. He has a very important theory on floating man, which actually what do you call it, actually proves the immateriality of the soul. But in one section of the Canon of Medicine, he talks about, he dedicates a special chapter to the question of mental faculties. So in mental faculties, which I want to say, which I want to mention about psychology, he classifies, you know, the mental faculties based on their qualitative characteristics. And he also emphasizes the necessity of single integrative, what do you call it, bond between these faculties. So he sees that these mental faculties is important, and they actually support one another. I think I can share one of the um, so okay, let me see here. Okay, this is okay, if you can see here, okay, this is a model called, you know, before I was working on it, this children's soul model. It's based on Ibn Sina's theory of soul. So this is the model I've created. So this is all the soul, the man's soul, the soul of man. All right, so you have here, under here, this is the, how should I explain it to you? Second. Um, So going up here is the vertical side. So this is the vegetative. So this is the mental faculties of Ibn Sina. So he actually divides the soul into vegetative soul, animal soul, and then there's the human soul. We have, this is the all, I mean, this is the human soul actually, but inside the human soul, there is the vegetative soul, animal soul, and the human soul. So here, down here, the vegetative soul needs to be developed, needs to be healthy in order to actually have a healthy animal soul. And without a healthy vegetative soul and an animal soul, you cannot arrive to a healthy human soul. Okay, this is his theory of soul. So the vegetative soul is actually it includes the nutritive faculty, the growth faculty, and the reproductive faculty. So this faculty actually needs to serve the animal soul. That's why it needs to develop well. It needs to be healthy. And then it goes, we'll go to the motive faculty, and then there's the external senses, irascible, appetitive, fantasy, imagery, and then imagination. And if one only develops only an animal soul, he will remain here. Only he works on the estimative soul. If not, he will only develop the animal soul. He won't be able to go develop the human soul. Okay, so here, if we see here, this is the horizontal side. Okay, if we go to the external world, we will use the external five senses, that all the images, how a child develops, how a human develops. This one needs to be this is the what do you call it, the first journey of knowledge, or knowledge of human being. This, it goes this way, it goes through external senses, and then if people receive images through the external senses, and then it will go into the internal senses of man. And then if this doesn't happen, if senses is not used, then knowledge cannot be processed by the brain. So this uses the brain. This part of the animal souls uses the brain as an instrument of knowledge, of knowing the self, of knowing of knowing the world. But when you go up here, it's only the soul. There's no intermediate of the brain in processing knowledge. Okay, this is where we're going to talk about the spiritual journey. But now this is where it goes through the external senses, and then internal estimative memory. This is where I'm going to pursue more on this. Okay, so Ibn Sina says that the animal soul, besides the physical senses here, he has also perceptions. So the perceptions is divided into one that actually perceives and can act, but there are people that only perceive but cannot act. But I think that can't act is, those who are sick, and some animals, that only receives shapes, images, without even acting. All right. So, and then there is also, after the perceive, the most important, he's saying that this external senses, if this is not healthy, it cannot actually produce knowledge. You cannot produce, you cannot know the world, and even yourself. So he's saying that after in the brain, if you see, the structure of the brain in front, he puts the faculty of external senses, or we call it the common sense, in front of the head, in front of our forehead. That's where the common sense is actually located. And then after that, when it's produced by the productive faculty, and then you have the what is called the pictorial or formative faculty, which preserves what is received by the common sense. And then you also, when it's preserved, and then we have a third faculty, which is called imaginative. Okay, this is where I said this, it stops right here, imaginative. And imaginative faculty, you know, in the human soul, it is when it's kept, I mean, when it processes images and information, it will have judgment, and this judgment, if you know, it represents the basis of our character, and it influences our acts, and you know, if there is a strong emotion that is carried during imaginative process of images and from information, this will actually affect through the body and through the organs, you know, not if it doesn't affect the body, it will affect some of the organs in particular. Okay, so it's important to actually in Ibn Sina, he actually give importance on how we perceive things in the imaginative, the process, actually the process, you know, because imagination actually relates to the external senses, it actually relates to the process, the whole process. So if this process, if we see the bad things, so imagination, it will create bad things, it will actually affect the body. And after the imaginative soul, there is the rational soul. This is, you call it the human soul or the rational soul. And the rational soul is only inherent in only man. There's no animal. Animal cannot arrive to this phase because he doesn't have rationality. So it, I've told you before that this rational soul or human soul, it perceives without intermediation of the brain, and it has, you know, it perceives, it has direct cognition, and we'll see how Ibn Sina reacts, works or reacts as a psychiatrist, yeah, because he's also he acknowledges psychology as an important field in medicine, because he sees the connection between the soul and the body. Okay, here I will explain some psychological disorders first related to the physical, and then we will arrive to the spirituality, knowledge, and well-being part of his method. Okay, so what he does is he okay, what we'll explore today is maybe on depression, on mania, and we'll see how he treats this kind of disease. Okay, so fundamentally, Ibn Sina used the integrative approach, which I said that, you know, he believes that the body can be healed through the soul. And this fundamentally integrative approach, you know, he has the basic elements of human organism because you know, there's a constitution of genetic predispositions in psychology. Now it's called genetic predispositions, which actually determines and assembles and also the factors of epigenetic, which can stabilize or disrupt the inner balance of the organism. Okay, so Ibn Sina's interpretation of psychiatric, okay, his interpretation is relies on something called antique medieval physiology, physiology. Okay, it relies on medieval physiology. So what is medieval physiology? Physiology is it is based on four basic element and material world, which is like fire, air, water, earth, you know, these temperaments and stuff. So he believes that when we are you know, the development of man, the health of man, it depends from the embryo when, you know, it's it starts there. It doesn't start only when we are born. It starts right after the embryo is exist, actually. So he says that this constitution of fire, air, earth is different in many people. There's some people, there's like they have the hotness more, the coldness more, the dryness more, the wetness more. And he believes that this actually contributes to the health of the development and health of man. Okay. Okay. So his model is like a biological model, of interpreting of psychiatric, I want to say about psychiatric disorders. And this has been used in the modern medicine, and as the basis for developing modern medicine, psychiatry. And Ibn Sina researched causes of mental illness, and he experimented with new diagnostic methods which he created, and also invented new methods for their treatment. So some of his methods was not confirmed during his time, but actually is confirmed during the contemporary period of time right now. So as we see, he sees that the mind can actually impact the bodily functions. This is what he actually sees, and he actually believes. And he says that a man who is ill can actually be healthy with his willpower. And a man who is actually healthy, but he's burdened, he's burdened with the constant believing or thinking about a disease, he can actually turn into someone ill. Okay, so he actually experimented one event on lambs. So he put two lambs in two particular situations, different situations. Sorry, the one lamb was not near a wolf, and one lamb he puts it near a wolf, and the wolf that is located near the wolf, he actually died earlier. I mean, and the other one lived happily ever after. So the one that died earlier, he died because of the sense of fear to the wolf that is situated near him. And this is where he sees that strong emotions, for example, can disturb the natural balance of organism, which I said that, fire, water, air, and so on. And this, the balance of the organism in such a way that it may result in death, and through its effective on, vegetative functions, as I said here before, where in here, okay, let me share this again. Okay, where in here it says that if strong emotions can actually affect the nutritive faculty, one will get very thin, and then he won't grow good, and actually give effects to the reproductive faculty, and so on. So if strong emotions can actually disturb the balance of the organism, and then one will actually what happens after that is judgment happens within the soul. We have judgments, we judge ourselves, we judge people, and these judgments, if carried to become a pure belief, and it will affect the body because it's coupled with strong emotions, and it will impact on the body and lead to changes in some of the organs. And this idea, he got it from where he believes that imagination, when it's already firmly established, it will necessarily seek change in nature. And this is where he says that soul affects the body, and but vice versa, soul is soul affects the body, but the body does not affect the soul. And if the soul is strong enough, it can heal the body. And but if it's not strong, he can make himself more sick and more ill, and it can actually even affect another body, which another person directly. Okay. And I want to actually share with you, share with you, some of his treatments on psychiatric disorders. Only two I will pick before we go into the spiritual knowledge and well-being. So what he treats, how he treated melancholia is melancholia, on those days, he doesn't call it as a depression. So in those days, he called it as melancholia. So why, if you link it to the contemporary medicine, the criterias that he's putting on melancholia, it matches the criteria for the diagnosis of major depressive disorder. And you'll see that he looks at the symptom of increased appetite or decreased appetite, weight loss, restlessness, weakness, and then frequent thoughts about death and suicide attempt. So Sina says the primary symptom is that one have sudden outbursts of anger, and then he has a tendency of towards solitude, and he will actually become more and more active if he doesn't go and actually seek for treatment. And this part is, he says something that in those days maybe it can be accurate, but nowadays, it's not really. So he says a man who has melancholia, he has a warm heart and abundance of hair on his chest, and then he says the humidity in the brain is more, and then with the fat lips. So this is, in the old days they looked of how, and now we can update it in many ways, and we don't see it as true right now. But he says it, many of other treatments, we can see of how he diagnoses the psychological disorder in a very systematic way. So he sees that he says that this depression or melancholia is often seen in men, but is heavier in nature in women. And then he actually categorizes this, and there's the early phase, and then there's the chronic phase. In those days, medicine was not that particular in that particular way. So he says that in the early phase, these patients will have suspicions of evil, fear of outcasts and quick anger, and then involuntary muscle movement, and so on. And it's like, they have this abnormal fear of like the sky may fall on one's head, or maybe being swallowed by the earth. Okay, this is the chronic melancholia. I'm saying, the chronic depression. So how he treats it, okay, he says that, before I go to the treatment, okay, he says that first, okay, the woman and elderly people are at higher risk for depression. And then he pointed out a connection between depression and other diseases. And then he says there are different combinations of bodily fluids that can actually cause depression. So bodily fluids, it depends on our environment. It depends on what we eat. And he will actually, in the treatment, he will actually provide a list of what to eat and not to eat. And he also says that it attributed this, Ibn Sina attributed melancholia to an abnormal increase in black bile. So black bile is like, is a fluid coming out from Oh God, I forgot. Well, it's something. Well, here he says that it's concentrated in the brain, but uh, in other parts of medicine, it's saying that it's gathered in the bladder, I guess. I'm not sure. All right. So the black bile, he says that the abnormal this depression is caused by the abnormal increase of black bile concentrated in the brain. So Ibn Sina, he also talks about the origin of depression. He said that it can be found in metabolism and the effect of serotonin and localization of serotonin. This receptors in the intestinal and the circulation and the central nervous system. All of this have effect in depression. All right. So he gives a list of what to eat. Okay, so he says that the factor to the cure of melancholia or depression, he says that diet number one, and then sleep number two, three, you have to go for physical activity. And actually nowadays we see that the circulation of higher level of cortisol, prolactin, and dopamine happens when you do more physical activity and exercise. So this actually gives a yes to what has been said by Ibn Sina. And Ibn Sina says when a person, when his patient is actually affected with melancholia or depression, he says to add or to eat more sweet and fatty food, which supplies humidity to the body. And then he says that for healing depression, you should avoid foods like beans, bacon, I don't know, lentil, cabbage, bacon, no, I'm sorry, meat, lentil, cabbage, should also avoid salty, spicy food and sour food. And the herb medication is important, music therapy, aromatherapy, massage, improvement of social and communication with the family, and change of lifestyle. So his method is depending on the cause and effect of the law of nature. So everything is actually connected and together for the cure. And he also is known for treating one of the prince. I don't know if it's related with the lamb, with the one that became the cow, but yeah, he actually there was one prince that because he seek patronage in many places, in many countries. I'm sorry, one country, but many states. So one of the princes saying that he was sick for a long time, and no doctors and physicians can actually treat him. So Ibn Sina found out that this guy, this prince, he was in love with someone, I think was not the princess or from the royal family, so he couldn't get married, and he was sick for many time. And then so Ibn Sina found out when he just pressed on his blood pressure and stuff. So I found out, and he found the cure for this. So when he started to give food and stuff, the prince got better and better. So here in the canon of medicine, he was mentioning about the first, what the treatment is. He should let the person, the patient, go and enable the lover to be with his beloved. If not, you use an elderly woman should be engaged, to make the lover hate beloved, something like that. And then there's also the drug for treatment of melancholia, and then stuff like that. Okay, I think that's enough for the physical part. Okay, so we'll straightly go to what Ibn Sina mentioned about spiritual knowledge and well-being. So Ibn Sina, he was a devoted Muslim, and he was, a deeply religious nature, manifested. Now, he's a poet. He is also a philosopher, and so he tries in many ways to actually reconcile the different views uh, with the Islamic dogmas in many ways. So he believes that this teaching has to be related to Islam. And every time that he wants to solve a scientific or philosophical problem, he went to the mosque and pray. And he wrote like several treatises on the benefits of prayer, performance of the daily religious rites, on pilgrimage and everything. So one thing that he says in this is out of Canon of Medicine, but he mentioned it in his Kitab al-Shifa. The Canon of Medicine is more onto what I've mentioned before, but now in his Kitab al-Shifa is mentioned, or because his journey is, it's a long journey. When he arrived to this spiritual knowledge and well-being, he left everything, and he became like concentrating on himself, purifying himself. So what he mentioned is that he says that for attaining sublime spiritual knowledge, he says that one should strengthen and beautify his gaze and observe God's signs. So he says that one first must observe God's sign. Okay, when people observe God's signs, this state will be, deeply rooted and outlined in his soul. Okay, and then later on, there are phases. In this journey, there are phases, and he will arrive to a phase where the lahut will be revealed to him, and like he acquires like intimacy with God. It's not like he will be, but it's just that he feels that he is no longer attached to the material world. You see, so the language actually from the you call it like a Sufi way. Some people say it's like, it's impossible. It's, you're talking nonsense. But when someone goes through the spiritual journey, he talks about what he feels. It doesn't, maybe it doesn't like actually apply in the real world. So he's saying that this journey, you'll feel like you're unattached to the material world. This is what he said. So it's revealed to him, and then he says you arrive to a phase where you feel the sweetness, of ultimate pleasure of being close with God. And you'll feel a pure calmness and security inside, to a phase where you need nothing other than God. Okay, and let me see. Okay, and he says that the person's soul will constantly preoccupy himself with the thought of God, and the best worship for man is, he's saying, is salat, and the best serenity and relaxation is fasting. I think yes, I don't know if I can write it here. It would be good if I can write it here. Let me see. Let me see. Wait. Oh God. Get it. Okay. The best act of worship for man is salat. Okay. And the best serenity and relaxation is fasting. And he's saying the most useful good deed is charity. So he's saying salat, best act, fasting, serenity, and relaxation. And charity is the most useful good deed. And he says the most pointless effort is to discuss untruth, the thing that is untruth, because one, if he constantly discuss something that is untrue, he cannot get rid of his weakness, and he can't really change the condition. And the best deed one to do is to have anything done, actions done with sincere intention. And the most valuable intention is that that comes from the source of knowledge. So if you have attention is good, the best deed, but if you have the valuable intention is, which is supported by knowledge. And he says that the root and foundation of every virtue and good is wisdom. And the first and foremost is the knowledge of Allah. So that's where it comes back of looking at the signs of Allah. It's actually a journey, a spiritual journey, where it starts from the beginning of actually where I say in let me just show you this again. This here, okay, it starts the body. This is the body, okay, the body. If the body is healthy, and then you can actually arrive to these phases of intellect, which needs the purification of soul through phases where it can arrive to the sublime spiritual state. So what he says, okay, we can actually apply it in the psychology what do you call it, in the psychotropic science. We can say, like, this is a Sufi path of self-knowledge, where he sees the perfection is perfection. This is the perfect man. It has everything inside, and this is where he reaches up here. And he has to have self-control. He has to have development of more moral virtues, and one should organize his feelings, his thoughts, his behavior, his lifestyle. And it's a complex, holistically oriented approach, from the perspective of modern psychotropic science. But because it actually integrates many elements in psychotropic science, where they call it, not only spiritual. They have the psychoanalytic, they have the essentialist, they have the cognitive behavioral, they have the Gestalt approach, which actually combines the mind and behavior. And this is all combined in what Ibn Sina calls the Sufi path of knowledge. And therefore, he says a reasonable person is obliged to first afraid of shortcomings and flaws. Okay, a reasonable person must be afraid of shortcomings and flaws, and he has to be pleased with everything that perfects him. If he's pleased with everything that perfects him, so he goes to seek what actually completes him, and he will put away all that restrains him from actually being a perfect man, or actually arrive to this perfection. And he will be happy when he returns to the kingdom where he came from. I mean, from God created him, so it's actually, that's what he means. He'll be near to God, and mix with the good souls, and saves himself what is contrary to him. So in this method, it is necessary to understand that there is a relation between the concept of spirit, soul, and heart. There is a mutual relationship in the psychodynamics of spiritual improvement. So he says that the spirit is the essence in man, and the soul is the appearance of the essence before the mental cognition. Okay, so the spirit is important, and the soul is the appearance of the essence of the soul before the mental cognition. And the heart, which is in the physical body, signifying the bodily organ, and in philosophy and religious psychology till today represents, a symbol of all perceptibility and sensibility. So he says that the soul sits within the heart. And if the spirit is dominated, or the heart is dominated by the bodily desires, instincts, so if it's controlled by the animal, so it's controlled by the imagery, the desires right here. Therefore, it is denoted by the term selfish soul. So, it's a center of passion, sexuality and anger, aggression, and which would largely correspond to the psychoanalytic, you call it psychoanalytic ID. All right. So But if the spirit overcomes this instinct, so he overcomes all of this instinct and puts them under the control of reason. So the reason controls everything in the body, all right? He controls. So in the framework of reality, then it's called the mind and the intellect. That's why it's called material intellect, habitual intellect, actual intellect. It's called intellect, reason. So therefore, it's it's called the self-critical soul, or the closest psychotomy term is psychodynamic term is called ego. Say they call it ego, not the ego in the in the term used in our normal conversation. This is like psychodynamic term is called ego. So when the spirit is inspired by belief and then is dominated by religious and moral feelings, okay, and then it is then called the heart, or the closest psychodynamic term is called superego. So it's whether dominated by the bodily desires and instincts, or it's dominated, it overcomes all these desires and it's controlled by the reason. It will arrive to becoming intellects, and then ego, or if it's inspired by belief, it's called super ego. And this super ego, this is where it's very important. Okay, when a person arrives to the phase of super ego, okay, super ego up here, the thing that um, veils the heart of going further high is only looking at himself, self preoccupation. So if he sees the jamal or the jalal uh, in the creator, okay, which is up above here, no, it's not seen up above here. So he actually arrives to a phase which is called, in psychodynamic, is called ideal ego up here. Okay, so he sees the jamal and the jalal of God, no more on his self. And it's also called the divine ego, where a person arrives at peace, and the mental and spiritual peace, or sorry, the mental, and this is where the mental and the spiritual meets. That's why it's called intellect, and it's unite with the source. So we, a Sufi will say he's unite with the source. It's not actually he unites with God, but it's actually like it's an expression. It's like establishing connection with God, and he feels that the Jamal and Jalal is only related to God, and all his beauty is because it's intense. It's seen in the creation as mirrors of his beauty, right? And yeah, I think that's the end of my presentation for today. And sorry, I do not know what's happening with my video. Open the floor for any questions. Thank you.
So thank you very much to our speaker, Dr. Nurul Ain, for your intellectual and informative discussion just now. So I would like to open the floor for question and answer session. If you have any question, you may ask Dr. Nurul Ain directly. So I think there are no questions from our audience. So we will end our session here. Inshallah, we will continue the talk with another topic. Thank you again, Dr. Nurul Ain, and everybody. I'm ending this session by reciting Tasbih Kafarah and Surah Al-Asr.